Okay, so here we go. Uh, just playing around with the audio settings in OBS and making sure that everything's working the way it's supposed to. Never recorded into a microphone and played back audio from a computer into OBS ever. So hopefully this should work. Um, got everything set up the way it's supposed to be. What I want to talk about is Renoise, and specifically doing something in Renoise most people don't ever want to do, and if they did want to do it, they're basically just using the wrong piece of software. And that is incorporating live multi-track drums into Renoise. Now, if you don't know what Renoise is, it's a tracker, music tracker, which is a type of program or DAW that doesn't really work the same way as your typical linear DAW like Logic, Pro Tools, or whatever, Cubase, Bitwig. All of those, all of those DAWs really kind of just work on a linear timeline, and so you see everything just in a horizontal fashion, and you can have long strings of audio streams that can be played back uninterrupted, and that it really lends its well for things like live drums, because as you know, live drums consist of multiple tracks over a long period of time for you to be able to, adequately capture the sound of a drum kit. Trackers don't really they're not really designed to work that way, and yeah, like I said, you're not most people aren't ever going to try to do that in a tracker. Trackers, basically the way they handle music and the way they sequence is everything is a sample, and it looks like it is autosave. Okay, that autosave thing, I need to mess with that because it kind of causes a hiccup every once in a while. But trackers don't really work with audio. They work with, I mean, it works with audio, but it works with audio samples. And that really just comes down to the fact that trackers were originally designed for very kind of low end consumer computers from, like, 30, 40 years ago or whatever, like in the 80s, when people would buy like Amigas and Commodores and what, like Ataris and stuff like that. These really kind of like hobbyist budget computers that didn't have a lot of power. There was no like multi-tracking audio was just pretty much unheard of back then. So a way to make music for people with computers was to use trackers, and it's because trackers for the most part, use very little resources. They sequence small clips or samples over time, and each sample, if you have samples that are not only just short in length or low in bit rate, it's not going to use a lot of resources, and you can really stretch that. It's how a lot of things like the Amen break and all those things came to fruition, was people chopping them up and putting them in the trackers. So it works great for that, like stretching audio samples to the max. It doesn't work great for using very long audio clips and that need to be in sync with each other, such as one for like live drums. Live drums. If you're recording a live drum kit, you're not only recording long stretches of audio, but you're recording long stretches of audio across multiple tracks. So you see, I've got like two overheads here. This is a stereo track. I've got kick, snare top, snare bottom, rack, and floor. Renoise by default doesn't have any way. I mean, yeah, it's not just default. There's just no way to get around it. There's no way to record more than two tracks at a time in the Renoise. So, I mean, if you're recording like a guitar, sure, that's fine, no biggie. But with drums, it's just not going to work. So, and on top of that, you've got the limitation of individual patterns. You can see each pattern here is, I think, it's 256 lines per pattern. So if you wanted to have long stretches of audio that didn't overlap into each other, you'd have to clip each one of those audio tracks into multiple clips just so they would fit inside each pattern. Now I know that you can just have a sample run over multiple patterns if you want in Renoise, but I really just don't like that. I think it's kind of messy. Even if you have it beat sync turned on and auto sync turned on, it really kind of, I don't know, it just seems like something that will break if you rely on it too much. So what I found you can do is you can basically just record your live drums in another DAW. Like I recorded these in Bitwig, and then just chop them up and import them into Renoise, and that's what I did. And it works. It works really well. Each one of these instruments, overheads, kicks, snare top, snare bottom, rack and floor, are all exported from Bitwig in I think like 8-bar chunks. Like each one of these is 8 bars, which equates to 256 and the 256 lines in the pattern, but it is beat synced to 512 because I think this part of the track is actually in halftime, so it's going to be beat synced to 512 here. 512 is the max in Renoise. You can't have anything beat synced any longer than that. So that's the other problem with having really long audio samples stretched across multiple patterns. If you want to beat sync them, you're just not going to be able to do that if it's more than 512 lines. So that's another limitation that you're going to have to get around. But for this track, it worked out just fine to have the 8-bar clips beat sync to 512, which is, like I said, it's the limit. But anyways, I'm talking too much. I should just play the actual drum track so you can hear what I'm talking about here. Let's see. Here we go. Solo that. And why don't we come here? I'll just loop this over and we'll start that. And I think a lot of the compression was done in Bitwig. I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that, because I did mess with it in Bitwig before exporting it. I think when I exported it, it just exported the post effects. This is a pretty rough take. I'm probably going to redo this again, but this just for demonstration purposes, and we can see it works really well. And we've got our overhead, got our kick, and our snare top, snare bottom. Yeah, and we got both our rack and our floor. Both those work just fine. So yeah, I mean, it works really well. And because it's all beat synced and chopped up the way it's supposed to be, I mean, you can do all the wacky things that you do in Renoise. I mean, you can slow down the tempo and it stays in sync just fine. Get some sludge going there. You can set it so that it doesn't repitch, but I find that, especially with like percussive things, even though that it says that there's a time stretch for percussion, a lot of times it kind of just makes things sound garbly. Let's see if I mean, you can't expect it to be perfect when you start going to extremes, but when am I? Oh, I'm on the snare bottom. Let me fix that. Hang on. Overheads. So if I change that to percussion, it should maintain the pitch. Let's see, start and stop it here. Oh, it's still. Oh, you know what's happening is it's auto switching to. It keeps auto switching because I've got a setting that makes it do that. I know why, because I'm probably. Yep, I've got the snare bottom selected. Okay. Sorry. All right. It should stop doing that now. Okay, so percussion, if we play back, it will maintain the pitch. Kinda. No, it's not doing that at all, is it? Okay, what's going on here? Oh, you know why? Because we don't have the right sample. Here we go. Still missing the mark every time. Here we go. Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't know. You can do that. If you're messing with the tempo, within 10 BPM, it's probably a good way to go, but I'll just leave it on repitch because there's no point anyways, getting into the weeds. But basically, my point is it works. It works really well. And you can do, like if you're playing live, you can do the whole, you can do all the weird, wacky stuff that you can do in Renoise. And it seems to handle it just fine. I mean, you can see my CPU is not really freaking out or anything. It's just whatever. So yeah, you can do it. It just takes a little bit of prep to get it in there, but once you do, everything syncs up just fine. And Renoise does have serviceable effects. It looks like I've got an analog filter on the overheads, probably because they're a little bright, but I think the only compression I've got is on the main bus, just to kind of bring out the room a little bit. But it works really well. And yeah, that's live drums in Renoise. It can be done. Yeah, so I guess I'll go ahead and let this play out, and I'll hear the rest of the track.